Hey everybody, this is Gainer Milky, and this is the Conscious Success Plan, where we're upskilling for life. And our acronym LIFE stands for Love, Identity, Family, and Enterprise. Today, I wanted to talk about something that kind of crosses, I guess, all of these areas, and that's the topic of negging and negging versus nagging and how it's perceived. So, negging, if you're not familiar with the term, is kind of picking away at people's insecurities or negativities. And you see that sometimes in abusive relationships, and people may think that they're maybe being funny, but it's really um, kind of a very mean and childish way of dealing with their own insecurities, kind of like bullying. So negging is saying things like, you know, wow, you would be even better at that if you took some lessons, or, my brother was so much better at that, but you're trying at least. And then of course, there's negging on people's appearance and negging on, people's jobs and careers and basically like I'm equating it to being a very immature bully, and it's oftentimes done by adults and in relationships, usually to try to have power over somebody else and to make yourself feel better for your own shortcomings, and you kind of feel insecure, so you start to project that outwardly in negging behavior. And for some people, they may feel like negging when they feel like their partner or coworker or child is nagging them to do something, and they kind of turn things around as well. So an example of this might be, somebody says, you still haven't done X, Y, or Z, and they turn it around and say, yeah, well, you didn't do this, and you know, but let me do it because I'll get it done right. And so really like deflecting by using nagging when they feel like somebody else is nagging. So, you know, you can also nag on yourself, which is also something that a lot of people do, by kind of negative self-talk and just all day long, like instead of encouraging yourself, you're instead just like, wow, you know, beating yourself up. And one of the um, analogies that Dr. Shafali from the Conscious Coaching Institute that I'm licensed and certified in talks about is not shooting the second arrow. So if you have a habit of negging, whether on yourself or your, spouse or life partner, your identity, your family members, or at work, one, don't shoot the second arrow. So if somebody is nagging you to do something, you can directly address it by saying, I feel like you've asked me to do that a number of times, and this is when I'm going to do it, or, I'm an adult. I'm not going to do that. If you want it done, why don't you do it yourself? So I think those are important distinctions to make as well. Is sometimes negging can be the second arrow, or sometimes negging just comes out of nowhere. And so if it's a constant habit, then don't do tit for tat, but instead resist the urge to shoot that second arrow by also being negative and address it by saying, that's really kind of below the belt. Why do you keep doing that? And, diffusing the situation. And also another thing which, we've talked about quite a bit in the Conscious Success Plan is the idea of whatever's outside that's triggering you has to do with you. And so you can ask the other person as well, like, what is it about what you're doing that is making you have that reaction of being negative towards me? And is there something that I can help you with that would lessen your desire to do that? And of course, that's very difficult in the moment. We oftentimes flip our lid, which means we're really operating from the front part of our brain instead of, which is like very reactive and it's kind of fight or flight, the amygdala, instead of using our rational brain. And that's easy to do. And I know for myself, when I'm triggered, I need to kind of pull it back and bring myself into why am I feeling reactive about that. And that's definitely something that I need to probably work on. I'm not really outwardly negative, but I do tend to inwardly then take that negative force and think to myself, like, what's wrong with me? What have I done? And then sometimes I even get angry. And I need to not be so reactive because it's not good for me. And it's, ultimately it does get sometimes into my other relationships and more so as like a feeling overwhelmed and flooded and I don't respond as well. In fact, I'm more of a flyer than a fighter, so I need to be cognizant of that too. So think about some of the ways that perhaps you experience negging, or maybe you're a negger, and what can you do instead to address that behavior? Maybe you're negging against yourself, and really none of that is good. So let's um, think about how we can not nag and not nag, and instead be conscious of the idea that it's all probably small things that you're nagging on or nagging somebody about. And so if you want something different to happen, then it all really begins with your own willingness to stop shooting the arrows, stop shooting the second arrows, and just take action and either do something that will help make yourself feel less need to nag on somebody else or um, not nag and instead just take action and do what it is that you want instead. Because um, as I always talk about in my Tea with Miss G series, which is also on YouTube here on our channel, it's truth, empowerment, action. So we need to see the truth in ourselves as to why this is triggering us, empowerment to make the choice to do something different, and then take the action. So cheers to no more nagging, no more nagging, and when it happens, repairing as quickly as possible.